Good morning, guys. Just want to welcome you to Millionaire Brand Creation. I am super excited to have a friend of mine here that is the epitome of business, a great business mind, someone that understands not only finance and cybersecurity, but I'm going to kind of extol your accomplishments a little bit, Adam, before we bring you in, if that's okay. But if you guys don't know, Adam Levin is a consumer affairs advocate, serial entrepreneur of more than 40 years experience. He's nationally recognized expert in the cybersecurity, privacy, identity theft, fraud, and personal finance space. At age 27, Adam became the youngest director in the history of the New Jersey Division of Consumer Affairs. And if you know, it's one of the most powerful consumer protection agencies in the United States. He's a graduate of Stanford University, Michigan School of Law, and he started a company that was really instrumental in the cybersecurity space called CyberScout. And he was also the co-founder of a company I guarantee that you guys have heard of called Credit.com. Credit.com was sold in 2015 to, was it Sontiq, Adam? Is that correct?
No. Credit.com was sold in 2015 to Progrexion, not to be confused with Progressive Insurance. Progrexion, Progression.
And Adam has. Let me just continue extolling your accomplishments here. He is an author of a great book, Swiped: How to Protect Yourself in the World Full of Scammers. I got a copy of the book. I read it. It is excellent. And he has been on many national and international platforms: AOL, MSN, Huffington Post, Yahoo, MarketWatch, Good Morning America. The list goes on. And so I am extremely excited to have my friend on and poker buddy, Adam Levin. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing great. Well, if you don't know, this podcast was created to help young and old entrepreneurs navigate the business sector. A lot of people that are listening in now, and also people that will be watching after, are in the real estate space or the entrepreneurial space. And what I like to do is highlight successful entrepreneurs like yourself and kind of tell the story of their journey. I think there's a lot of nuggets to pull from these journey nuggets. So if you could, let's go back in time and talk about your childhood, which I knew was very exciting. I mean, I know your mother and father were some amazing human beings.
Well, my dad was one of the originators of the concept of the strip shopping center. He started as an attorney. About 6 months into his practice, he decided that he was having no fun and making no money. And so he got together with a number of people. They built a gas station. They built another gas station. They built some more gas stations. Then they started building for supermarkets, for American stores, became one of the big builders for American stores. And then he said, geez, I wonder if you make the parking lot a little bigger and throw some stores on either side of it, maybe it would work. And obviously it did. He was not into the mall per se, but he was into the strip center, the convenience center, the supermarket anchored shopping center.
And then something happened that was a big play. What was it, in the late 1960s, early 1970s, where tell us about that, because I know people are interested in that.
Well, in 1964, he walked into the living room and announced that he had an announcement. So he gathered the family together, and my mother said, "What have you done, Philip?" And he said, "I've just become the chief individual shareholder in MGM," to which she responded, "What have you done?" But over a period of a few years, he led the first 2 proxy fights to take over MGM, was unsuccessful, sold, and then about a year after he sold, he approached the Disney family about becoming a shareholder in Disney. They allowed him to take a small stake, but not a super large stake, because they didn't want to face a proxy fight from him, nor did he wish to have a proxy fight with them. But then in 1968, he got involved with his old venture Bluedorn at Gulf and Western. So for those of you who have watched The Offer on the Paramount channel, you have an idea of what was going on at Gulf and Western and Paramount Pictures at the time. He really wanted to sort of get back into the picture world along with the real estate world. He was a great believer that the studios should sell the land and then lease it back. And he got involved with Paramount, with Gulf and Western. He spun off the real estate division of Gulf and Western, started buying up leisure time properties. They were moving across the country, and they spied Roosevelt Raceway in New York, which they wanted to buy. And it was at the same moment that Madison Square Garden Corporation was also trying to buy Roosevelt Raceway. So they decided instead of fighting, they would merge. So they became Madison Square Garden Corporation, and that was the real estate as well as the two teams, the Knicks and the Rangers. So it was a pretty exciting time. Unfortunately, passed away in 1971. And then Gulf and Western made my family an offer they couldn't refuse in 1975. And so we sold out our position in the Garden. But we were there during the glory days when the Knicks won 2 world championships and the Rangers got all the way to the finals and then lost to the Montreal Canadiens.
Now, your mom had an amazing entrepreneurial mind too. And I remember you were telling me that she had an extensive art collection that she, wanted to showcase in New York, et cetera. Can you tell us about that experience and how your mom kind of took the reins from your father after his passing?
No, when my dad passed away, my mother took over. She viewed herself more as a caretaker than as an explorer, as it were, but yet managed to quadruple the size of the business by the time that she passed away. There are over 10, 12 million square feet of real estate that is family owned, plus several million square feet where we're the third party management agent. But she was very involved in that. She was involved in horse racing. She used to kid about the fact that her horses lived better than she did. She also had a very famous, smaller Impressionist art collection, which toured the United States a couple times. And in fact, one of her major paintings was given in the National Gallery of Art. Several went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. She had the Corot Room at the Met, which she is still, the family sponsors that. And then the art was then sold, the proceeds put into the Levin Foundation. Now the foundation does good works in education, the arts, in public interest advocacy, things like that. So those are the kinds of things that we're involved with. So we are still a shopping center-based family. Our prized possession is the Paramount Building in New York on Times Square, and then we have all the other activities that go on as part of the family.
Love that. Now, tell us about your political run. I know you wanted to foray into politics, and in at 27, obviously, you became a great politician. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, actually, I had a unique story, and that was that in my, they always kid about the fact that when you go to law school, the first year you're scared to death, the second year you're worked to death, the third year you're bored to death. So I went to University of Michigan Law School after Stanford and loved it. Got very involved in a number of things, including legal services. And then my senior year, I was contacted by the Democratic Party in Union County, New Jersey, which was my old congressional district where I grew up, Plainfield, New Jersey, and an opportunity to run for a seat. And the House opened up. It was only a one-term congressman at the time. And so I was commuting between Ann Arbor, where I was in law school, and New Jersey. And I won an upset primary, lost the general. And then a friend of mine, who at that time was the commissioner of transportation in New Jersey, Alan Sagner, who was part of the Sagner-Levin home building empire, which was a different Levin than our Levin wing, said to me, he said, I know you love politics, and there is one place that you could go that is very high visibility, and the director is an incredible woman, and I know she'd love to work with you. And who knows if she ends up being elevated by the governor to a higher position, you might have an opportunity to become head of consumer affairs, which in terms of being in the public eye was like the third highest office in terms of public visibility. And so I went to work as a volunteer for the agency because they really couldn't afford to pay me at the time. And in 1976, and then in 1977, when the director was elevated to commissioner of banking, she recommended to the governor that he appoint me. So in May of 1977, I became the youngest director in the history of the agency. I served for 5 years. I resigned in January of 1982 to take a second run at Congress. Very, very close, didn't quite make it. And then from there went into real estate development and ultimately then ended up founding credit.com and then CyberScout.
So let's fast forward then a couple of years, and if you can, tell us how you founded or co-founded credit.com, because that's a household name that I know a lot of people are very familiar with. How did that come about?
It came about, actually, a friend of mine at the time introduced me to a fellow who was in the music business, but very adept at credit. He had gone bankrupt at age 20. He had owned a painting company. Someone stole all the equipment. He had to have it properly insured. He lost everything, including his wife and family, vowed never to happen again, became a credit expert, decided he wanted to help other people, came to me and said he wanted to write a book on credit. So we created something called Building Credit Credibility. And we were filming an infomercial because those were the early days of the Tony Little, Tony Robbins, Susan Powter, Don LePray years, big infomercial years. And about a year into it, after having filmed 70 hours worth of testimonials and the like, he said to me, this is getting very expensive. We're going to have to give up too much of the action to directors, producers, and heaven knows who else. But there's this new thing called the internet. I think it's going to work. I said, the internet? That's interesting. This was like 1994. And he said, I have managed to get for us an incredible domain, credit.com.
But you're like, what's that? What is domain back then?
And I said, I've heard of the eminent domain. I've heard of other kinds of domain. But he said, think of it as it's the address, the online address. This is the domain, credit.com. One word domains were like very, very precious. And he said, wait for it. We can get it by swapping an $1,800 hard drive with the guy who has the registration. And so we did. And in late 94, early 95, we went online as credit.com. We were one of the first credit education, information, advocacy, and products and services site. The rest was history. We were there. Elon was there. Lending Tree, Doug Lebda was there. We used to go to all the same conferences together. And then in the early 2000s, Credit Karma came along, and we had very similar products. But the difference is that someone was looking to buy us at the same time that they went out for money. They raised a fortune, and we ended up in acquisition discussions, which at that time went nowhere, ultimately went somewhere a few years later. And so the real players at the time were really Credit Karma, Lending Tree, Credit.com, Credit Sesame. And then in 2015, we were sold to Progrexion. But at that time, during that period of time, I also founded another company, whereas Credit.com was direct-to-consumer credit product and service. We created a company called Identity Theft 911, which was business to consumer in the identity theft space, which was something most people hadn't even heard of at the time.
Right.
And over the years, it morphed into IDT 911 because a number of the insurance companies that we work with said that the name Identity Theft 911 scared their policyholders to death. So and they were all used to calling us IDT 911, so we became that. But then we had the issue of reporters saying, "So are you an alarm company or a phone company?" We said, "No, no, no, neither." And then as we expanded globally, we were able to get the domain CyberScout. And then in 2021, we were purchased by a company called Sontiq, which had rolled up another couple other companies. They one more company after us, and then 6 months later sold to Transunion for a staggering amount of money. So we won and they won. And that's the beauty of it. If you do it right with online businesses, everybody can win.
So here's a question, Adam. Obviously, you've lived a very, interesting and privileged life. Obviously, you came from a well-to-do family and you've been around the highest levels of business and the highest levels of politics. What would you recommend for younger entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, looking to hit the reset button now in their lives? What would you recommend that they spend their time doing at this point in time?
Well, I think the most important thing is, learn, listen. Everybody likes a good talker, and entrepreneurs, many of them tend to be very good talkers. But it's very important to listen, see what's going on, try to identify a particular trend, and be fearless. Don't be stupid. Don't be don't be a cowboy, but try to come up with a path that makes a lot of sense. And remember, every time you have a meeting with somebody who's in venture, you're going to walk in at 5'9" and walk out at 5'1". It just
Mm.
it's one of the things that's going to happen. And so they really want to know, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Why is your solution unique as opposed to everyone else's? Why should they give you their money when there's, heaven knows, thousands of other opportunities out there? And of course, right now we're experiencing a situation where many of the venture guys have stepped back a little bit, pending the direction of the economy. Some have not. Some have gone boldly into that good night. But, it's a tough go out there. But that doesn't mean that you give up. That means you just fight on. But you need to come up with a sensitive plan. You need a sensible plan, and you need to, have a serious budget in mind and understand frugal is a very important word when it comes to this particular investment environment. People want to know that you're, not spending money on crazy things. I remember when credit.com was looking for new space after the internet bubble blew up. We found incredible space in San Francisco that had been going for like 60 a foot. We got it for 10. And we walked
Wow.
into this one space, and somebody had spent years fixing up the space and they had every uh, electronic play toy you could imagine in the space. And it just, you
Yeah.
saw how the fact that, people, they went to excess and they got eaten alive by excess. Another thing is, know your market and don't try to eat the world. Once you've mastered a market, be cautious, do an analysis, decide what makes sense, but don't just say, well, I succeeded here, so no question that I can just take a much wider footprint and automatically succeed there.
That's a great point. Now, here's a question I ask a lot of our viewers who are well to do. At this point in your life, obviously you're looking to enjoy your beautiful life, your beautiful wife, your son, and all the things that you've accomplished, which are amazing. What would you do at this point in time if all your wealth was stripped away and you had to do it all over again? How would you
Well,
start from scratch?
I think again, I would go into the areas that I'm familiar with. I would team up with people that I'm familiar with, that I have relationships with. The other thing I learned, because I always self-financed every one of my deals, is that
Mm,
it's a good idea to try to have other people in the boat with you. A, because you'll
mm.
be hopefully all rowing in the same direction. But B, it gets real lonely real fast when you're the only guy in the boat, especially if the boat somehow springs a leak. And you have to assume the fact that regardless of how perfect any vessel might be, you're going to run into
Yeah.
rough seas and you're going to have leaks and other things. And you don't want to be the one guy with the finger in the hole in the leak, and there's nobody else helping you, so you're kind of flailing.
Now, when you obviously you co-founded a lot of amazing companies, I mean, extremely large companies. What do you look for in partnerships and what do you look for with employees?
Honor, integrity, people who are not afraid to work hard, who believe, there's a lot of guys out there that are smart. The issue is you have to be smart and you have to work really hard. And anyone
Mm,
that talks about the fact that, yeah, really, hard work, all right, not that, that's not true. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur and this is going to be your business, this is what you have to think about 24/7 until you get it in the right place and you surround yourself with the right people, and always surround yourself with people who you think are smarter than you are. I
I
know there are
love
a lot
that.
of people that are worried that if they bring on too many smart people, they may get forced out. And but you don't want to. If you don't have smart people around you, you could end up getting closed out. So it's it's really important to, you know, trust your gut, trust your instincts, rely on people whom you respect to give you advice, listen to their advice, and find people that you respect. I've been in business with all kinds of people, many of whom were, I learned the hard way, were not as scrupulous as I'd hoped they would be, and others were even more scrupulous than I dreamed they would be. And the whole thing is, you've got to know when someone is your partner, you can trust them with your life. And yes,
Mm,
everybody has an agenda. You can't assume that your agenda is going to be the only one in town. But it's so important to build trust, have trust, respect people, listen to the people who work for you.
mm,
My mother used to have a saying. She was a little harsh, but she would say, "When I want your opinion, I'll give it to you." That's
mm,
not the way you should really be operating. You should solicit opinions. Obviously, at the end of the day, you have to make the decision. Don't let other people make the decision for you. Don't delegate that unless A, you trust them with your life, and B, you guys are pretty much on the same page. And it's important not to be surrounded by people that go, "You're right, boss. Anything you say, chief."
yes, men and
No, you
women.
want
Yes.
you want people who push back. You want people who will make you fight. I remember I had a professor in constitutional law, and I always said to him, "Professor Horn, why is it that if someone has the right answer, you grill them more than someone who has the wrong answer?" And
Mm,
his response was, because in life, it isn't about just having the right answer. It's about being able to defend that answer.
mm. It's a great point. Yeah. Now you're a father and you have a young, handsome son who's going out into the schooling space, right? He's looking at girls. He's looking at business opportunities. I know he wants to be in the MBA. What do you tell him when it comes to business and when it comes to acumen and when it comes to setting his future? What are some of the pearls of wisdom you shed on his light?
Well, I think the most important thing, and this was taught to me when I was young, is all money is round. Certainly
Mm,
so with cryptocurrency, depending upon which one you have. But all money is round. You can lose it as fast as you can make it. Uh,
mm,
you know, my mother was a child of the Depression, as my father was. And, you can be in a situation where you're the top of the world today, but the world changes and all of a sudden you're not. And
mm,
so you always have to make sure that you have sufficient reserves, that you can live the life you want to live while you're going through hard times, or at least there's enough there to help you survive difficult times. And I realize an awful lot of people out there that live paycheck to paycheck. And when you run through periods like this, it can be exceedingly difficult for them uh, to make it or to survive. So What I try to tell him is, as my father used to say to me, all a rich person is a poor person who's fortunate enough to have money. So act
Mm,
accordingly and act cautiously and realize that the bounty you have today could be nothing tomorrow.
that's great advice. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I know we've talked a lot about our childhoods, et cetera. And I told you about my father. And one of the best pieces of advice he gave me is he said, never equate your self worth to your net worth because they are not correlated whatsoever. And you must realize that you're going to go through hardships and you're going to go through abundance, very similar to what your parents told you. And in those abundant times, realize hardships are around the corner. And in those hardship times, realize light and opportunity is right in front of you. And I thought, that's a very good point, actually. And knowing all of that, I'm so glad that you came on today as opposed to any other day. Because if you can, I know you have a lot of money at play. You have a lot of money in the stock market and in businesses and in venture capital and things like that. What are you seeing on the horizon now with the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, the highest they've been in several decades? What are you seeing in the next 6 months to a year and a half?
Well, I mean, I see rates continuing to go up. Inflation is proving to be a lot more stubborn than we thought. Uh, I have a number of people who say to me that they believe that, by this time next year, or about by this time next year, that they might start cutting rates because we might run into a recession. It's wild card. Nobody really knows how far they're going to push and if if that is going to push the economy into a recession. We don't know. The economy still seems to be pretty strong, although we see definite cracks in the housing market and some of the other sectors. But again, you have to approach this is not going to be an easy time. That you have to be a little bit more conservative, a little bit more cautious, and hopefully it'll pay off. But this is just like when we went into the pandemic, nobody had a clue as to how we were going to come out. We came
Yeah.
out a lot better than they thought we were going to come out. But we got a lot of stuff going on in the world. I mean, you've got the war going on. You've got a questionable situation with China and Taiwan. Um, you have in this country the possibility of a recession. Not to mention the fact that we have a politically extremely divided country, which is not making things any easier for anybody. So I think we just have a lot of unknowns. And I always know that, the stock market always, the theory there is the stock market can deal with good news and even to some level bad news. But what it can't deal with is uncertainty. And we are dealing with a great deal of uncertainty now. So when things are uncertain, come up with a plan, stick to your plan, but understand the fact that anything might change. So therefore, err on the side of conservatism.
How important do you think in the next 6 months to 18 months liquidity is to someone's portfolio and having cash on the sidelines?
I think I mean, there are some people who, if things suddenly, turn around over the next few months, they're going to go, I can't believe I just missed one of the great buying opportunities of all time. Certainly you have people that are kicking themselves for what they missed in March 2020, but fear not, we're moving back toward that area. Um, but I think it's always important to have a sufficient amount of liquidity so that, you never have to change your life appreciably, although many people will have to change their lives appreciably. Um, but liquidity is very important. Cash is very important. And they always go, well, if you have a lot of cash in an inflationary time, you're going to be losing money. But the answer is, if you've invested that in something and it goes in the wrong direction and it's there for a significant period of time, and that was money that you were counting on, that you needed, that you have to say to yourself, was it better I, lost the say 5, 6, 7% return, but I'm, but I have cash and I'm not down 30%.
I'll tell you what I'm seeing, and I'm wondering if you're seeing it in your ends as well. I know a lot of people, especially People that are millionaires on paper, and I say that loosely, they have a lot of equity tied in their homes, right? A lot of their net worth is tied to equity in their primary residence or other residences, et cetera. And they believe that that money is available to them. The problem is, seeing what's going on in the interest rate environment, I really believe you are going to see home prices come down in the short term because interest rates are high.
We're seeing, we're
Say
seeing
that
that.
again.
I mean,
We're
I said
seeing
we're
that.
seeing home
Yep.
prices coming down. So,
Yep.
now you have the sort of the Sophie's choice here. Do you take money out of the house now at this level, knowing that you may, depending upon when you may need to refinance it, you may run into significantly higher rates and lower valuation, or do you just hunker down and say, I'm going to try not to take anything if I can avoid it, because it's getting very expensive? I mean, what rates are you seeing right now for mortgages?
30-year fixed as of yesterday just rose above 6% for a conventional loan. We haven't seen that in over 25 years. We have an
And
inverted yield curve.
yeah. Now,
Go
where
ahead.
was it? Where was it in January? And look at how
Three
that
and a
has
half
deteriorated.
percent. I mean, we went up
Yeah,
250 basis points. I mean, that's pretty bad.
it is.
And
It
so,
is. And
yeah, no, go ahead. Go
I've
ahead.
had no, I've had bankers who've said to me, because we do some things and we buy things, and then we think about taking loans against them, and they've all said to me, "Don't do it. Not now. Not now. Wait for about a year, and hopefully you'll start to see the rates moderate." Um, that doesn't help somebody that absolutely positively has to buy something right now. But if that's the case, then you want to get something where you will be able to refinance at a more reasonable number. It's just the question is when.
And from a prudent standpoint, seeing what you saw with your father, with your mother, you've lived through a lot of downturns as well. From a net worth to liquidity ratio, what do you think the number is? 5%, 10%, 6 months of living expenses a year? What do you feel is a prudent amount to play it safe these times?
Well, again, it depends upon what you have at your fingertips, or at least that you
Right?
can get your hands on. I have one friend who says that he has 2 years worth of living expenses in cash.
Wow.
And I said, well,
And that's
you're denying yourself quite a return. And his response was, but it beats the alternative.
mm,
He said, I don't want to turn to something that I'm going to need and find out that there's a lot less of it. So if I have a certain amount of cash set aside, I never have to worry about what's invested, because the investments will take care of themselves, as it were, as long as they're properly managed. Whereas if you're in a situation where you're cash squeezed, now you're at the mercy of the bank. You're at the mercy of whatever someone is willing to pay for your asset. Um, so you have to be careful. I mean, other people say they want to know they have at least 1/4 in cash. So it really depends upon your risk tolerance and the amount of assets and capital you have available to you.
Well, what's fascinating and it's interesting because no one is bulletproof. And I noticed that in January. It's interesting, when home prices started coming down over the last month or two, obviously the stock market has played a roller coaster ride over the past 8 months. But when you're getting hit on your stock market portfolio, you're getting hit in your business evaluations, you're getting hit now on your real estate portfolio, you start to really understand quickly that there are holes that need to be plugged. And it's
Yep.
fascinating to me that so many people are unaware at this point that they're undercapitalized for the possibilities to come. What do you feel about that? What are you seeing in your life in regards to that at a higher level?
Well, I certainly know when the pandemic started, I started to see that there was erosion on all sides, and it became somewhat disconcerting.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same point, I think everyone needs someone that they can trust, who they look to, who is experienced in wealth management,
Mm,
and consult them and have a plan. The whole point is you got to have a plan.
mm,
Now, my mother's line was always "Man, plan, God's laughs," but the fact of the matter is that still you really need to have a plan. So you have to sit down and say, what am I going to need to get through this? And what do I need to have set aside in different investments that at least have a shot of growing? And where am I going to take my shot in the event that I see assets undervalued, which there are some that still argue that many assets are overvalued right now? Certainly in the housing market, we see that. But seek the advice of a professional, someone you trust, or someone who someone you trust can recommend to you, and then listen carefully and then come up with a plan and understand that plan might involve some pain, but
mm.
at the end of the day, you can come out and, the old thing, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Yeah, no, that's great. And how important in your mind is a mentor? Who was your mentor and what did he teach you about business and about life?
Well, my father was my mentor. I just lost him too young. I was 21 when he died. Some of his business partners became mentors to me. My late brother-in-law, who was a business genius, was a mentor. I had a lot of respect for him. In my public life, my former boss at Consumer Affairs, who by the time she retired from government service, she was an associate justice of the New Jersey Supreme Court. I looked to her for advice, and you know, she gave me great advice. I remember the night before I took over, I called her and said, like the scene out of the Candidate with Robert Redford when he turns to his campaign manager and goes, "Melvin, what do we do?" And I remember calling her the night before and saying, "What do you advise? You've been here." And she said, "Well, the guy that runs the deputy attorneys general for consumer affairs is brilliant. He's conservative. She said, in him, you know everybody. What I would say is take his advice and then 25% from where he is and about 25% from where you are, that's about the right place to be."
Mm,
So it was very helpful. And the next morning when I was sworn in, it was like, that's it. I was off to the races. So, there will
right.
be people that,
Immediate. Yeah.
yeah, there will be people in your life, whether they're a lawyer, an accountant, a financial advisor, for whom you have enormous respect, who's got an enormous amount of experience, and look to them, look to family, depending upon who that family member may be. I found that my wife has been an incredible source of inspiration and wisdom for me, and you know, talk things out. Listen and talk things out. Don't jump to any particular conclusion, and always keep an open mind.
Hmm. Now I'm gonna give you a scenario here, and I'm wondering how you're gonna play it. So what if I deputize yourself a real estate agent? So now you're a Tennessee or you're an Arizona real estate agent right now. You've been deputized and licensed. How would you go out and navigate this market if you were a newfound real estate agent, knowing what you know in business and where we're going here with interest rates?
I'll be honest with you. I don't have a clue. Ask me something in cybersecurity, I'll give you an answer. Ask me something in being a real estate agent, I can't. I mean, I'm amazed by, frankly, the wisdom of many real estate agents, such as yourself, that I have met. And
Thank you.
um, I guess if I were a young real estate agent, I would want to affiliate myself with someone uh, perhaps a little older, wiser, experienced in the area that we're operating, and find out exactly what they are. I mean, don't think of yourself as immediately as Bud Fox in Wall Street.
I love, it's Adam. I got to tell you, my favorite line in cinema, because I know you love cinema too, is
Yeah,
I remember when Bud Fox is in the office and he's talking to his, I forgot, what was that older gentleman's name? Hal Holbrook, I think was his
Hal
mentor.
Holbrook. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said, you're on a roll, kid. Enjoy it while it lasts, because it never does. And I was just thinking about that in life. And it's so interesting how many people are on top of the world and instantly they get taken to their knees, whether it be emotionally or financially, or there's a death or there's illness. And you just realize how fragile we all are. And we don't not know that we're that fragile. It just fascinates me. But it's
Well,
funny that you say that.
there's a wonderful line. I love the movie George Scott. And there's a great line toward the end where he's talking about where the Roman emperor would ride through the city and he would have a slave standing next to him whispering in his ear, all glory is fleeting. And, don't become a legend in your own mind. I would certainly advise people don't, we always say, don't believe the press clippings.
Yeah.
Try to stay grounded and understand the fact that absolutely things can change. And just like Hal Holbrook said, Bud, you're staring into the precipice, and you're
Yeah.
you're
The
basically looking
abyss.
back out at yourself. You know,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? And sometimes the toughest question is, what are you going to do? And be always thoughtful about what you're going to do. Do just like we say to people in cyber. If someone puts the heat on you to make a decision like 3 seconds from now, don't do it. Pause, think
Mm.
about it. Think about the ramifications. Nothing short of, you know, a truck is bearing down on your child. Are you going to push him left or right or her? That's one thing. That is an immediate decision that has to be made. But a lot of other decisions do not have to be made in seconds. Therefore, take the time, weigh the options. As President Bartlett used to say in the West Wing when he was talking to Rob Lowe, he would say, and they were playing chess, he would say, look at the whole board. And that's the important thing is look at the whole board when you make a decision. Don't make a decision based on things in isolation because
Mm.
decisions have ramifications. And never forget that those ramifications can be life changing, either good or bad.
It's a great point. I want to open it up to some questions. Matt, can you pull some questions up into the chat so Adam could answer them? I know the crowd probably has a few questions for Adam. Patrick has a question. I have some high interest credit card debt, and I'm thinking about taking a loan at a much lower interest rate to pay off my credit card debt. Any thoughts, Adam? Benefits versus downside?
Well, I think that if you can put yourself in a position where you can consolidate your debt and pay a lower rate, it's a good thing to do. Now, some people go, okay, so once I pay off my credit card, I'm going to close it. The answer is do not close it. What you don't want to do is lower the amount of credit that is available to you because your credit score is based to a not insignificant percentage on how much of your available credit are you using. So if you lower your credit, that means whatever you are charging, it will be a higher percentage. So therefore, don't close it. Put it in a safe deposit box. Pay it off. Try to look at credit cards also like debit cards, and use credit cards where you can as opposed to debit cards because their protections are greater, especially if you have identity theft issues and the like. And some people go, come on, I'm trying to be an adult. And the way I'm an adult is I'm just going to use my debit card. I'm only going to spend what I have in my bank account, and that's it. The answer is approach your credit card the same way, but your credit card will give you greater protection. And that's the adult moment is I'm going to control myself, but I'm going to look at my credit card as if it were a debit card.
great. That's a great point. Any other questions, Matt?
I think you went a little fuzzy on me. Try that one again.
Oh, I just said if there's any other questions. Okay, Patrick has another question. How much of my net worth should I be holding in cash if you had to give a percentage?
Well, I'm, a little bit more conservative than most. If you can have 25% of it in cash, that would be great. For some people, that's not possible. There are other people that say, no, I want 50% of my net worth. Again, if it's in cash, or let's say it's a cash equivalent that is earning a rate of return, that's one
Right.
thing. You have to decide on the instruments that you feel comfortable with based on your risk tolerance. But I would say if you could do 25% of your net in cash, or at least have it in things that you can readily convert to cash without hurting yourself in terms of the value, I
And
would do it.
cash equivalents, Adam, we're talking about certificates of deposit, T-bills, U.S. Treasuries, cash. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. And I mean, right now, someone just got me some 6-month treasuries yesterday at 3.06%. Not the
Right.
greatest in the world, but it sure beats, what was it, 1.5 just a few months ago?
Yeah. And that's David Marsh has a question. Do you recommend we get a service like LifeLock to monitor our credit for theft? Oh, you love questions like this, Adam.
I do, and we've had an interesting history with Todd Davis and the guys over at LifeLock, and I'm very fond of Todd. Um, I do very much believe that you should monitor your credit, and LifeLock has an excellent service. Aura has an excellent service. You've also got the 3 credit reporting agencies that have a variety of different products and services. What you want in a monitoring product is something that will track your credit score, because you need to know if it takes a sudden precipitous drop that you can't explain. That could be for one of 3 reasons. First, you're not paying your bills on time, not good, and you need to know that. Secondly, you're using too much of your available credit, following up on a question that I just answered earlier. Or third, you're a victim of identity theft, and as someone would say, no bueno. You need to know that. That's why when I wrote the book Swiped with my co-host Bo Friedlander a few years ago, we developed a framework which we call the 3 M's. How do you minimize your risk of exposure, reduce your attackable surface? How do you monitor so you know as quickly as possible you have a problem? And then how do you manage the damage? So the way you want to monitor is you want to get your credit report, you want to review your credit report, not just be thrilled with the fact that, look, I got my credit report. No, it's not enough. You have to look at it, and you have to look in particular for things you didn't do, and then look for things that it thinks that you did, that you in fact may have done, that you may not have remembered you did. So that's number 1. Number 2, credit scores, monitor your credit scores. Number 3, sign up for what's called transaction alerts from your credit card companies and your financial institutions. This is free, and it will notify you anytime there's activity in your credit card accounts or in your bank account. Now, some people go, I'll set it at a number, like, don't tell me unless it's $1,000. No, you really need to know every transaction, because one of the ways they get you is if they get anywhere close to your credit card, they'll run a trial charge, and that could be as low as $1. And if that works, all of a sudden they're going to hit your card for the limit. And trust me, they know the limit because they bought your credit card information, many of them on the dark web, by available balance or whatever, the credit. It's like a bazaar. You can buy it based on points, available balance, maximum credit available, zip code. A lot of people don't realize that millions of credit and debit cards are sold online by zip code in the hopes that the bank will miss it because it was used within the zip code that you normally would spend. But they think it's you. But if you get the notification and look at it and go, wait a minute, that may have been around the corner. I was 3 states away yesterday. So that was not me. So then you want to be able to do something about it. You want to read explanation of benefit statements that come to you from your health insurers. We've had people that have actually determined by reading their explanation of benefit statements that there were examinations and treatments that occurred supposedly to them, but it wasn't them. I mean, we once had a 72-year-old grandmother that on one day on opposite sides of the country, her insurance was charged for a sperm viability test and a pregnancy test. Now, obviously, at 72, that's not you, but somebody believed it was. Then you also need to look for more sophisticated forms of monitoring, like LifeLock, like Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, like Aura. There are others, Credit.com, Credit Karma. They offer this. And in particular, you want something that will notify you when your identity is in play. So instead of saying, hey, Michael, a few weeks ago, somebody opened an account in your name, it was an alert that will come through to say, Michael, someone is attempting to open an account in your name right now. Is it you, yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
So you want you want that, and you also want a service that monitors the dark web. And many of these different organizations offer, as part of their monitoring, that kind of a service. And also, a lot of people don't understand, and this is the 3M, that through their insurance company or their financial service organization or their employer, there are identity protection and identity monitoring programs that are offered to you. And in some cases, it's free or deeply discounted as a perk of your relationship with the institution. So ask your insurance agent, ask your financial services rep. Usually credit unions are more member-centric than banks. And ask the HR department where you work. Do you have a program? Am I in it? If not, what do I have to do to get in it? Is it free or deeply discounted or full price?
Are there any other questions, Matt? That was a great explanation, Adam. Thank you for that.
No, I think we're I don't have any more questions in the chat right now.
Well, what I can do, if we have another couple of minutes, talk about the first M. How do you minimize your risk of exposure?
Oh,
I like
great.
that.
And-
let's do that for about a minute and a half, and then I got one question to ask you.
All righty. First of all, long and strong passwords that you do not share across your universe of passwords, or use a password manager. And you have to remember that you could even have the perfect long and strong password that is indecipherable. But if it has been discovered because of a data breach and it's out on the dark web, and you could find out by going to the website, Have I Been Pawned? That's PWNED, haveibeenpawned.com. You can check to see if your user ID or password or now phone number has been exposed in a breach. Secondly, you should enable two-factor authentication. And that's where when you start to log into something and it goes, wait, we're going to send you a code because we just want to make sure it's you. That's an extra layer of protection when you're logging in. Two-factor. A lot of people whose Instagram accounts were stolen rue the fact that they did not use two-factor. They would notify them if someone was attempting to log in as them. You don't click on links. You don't open attachments unless you're dead sure where they came from. And even then, the person who sent it to you may have unknowingly sent you something with malware on it that could put ransomware on your computer. Also, just don't download apps that are the newest, coolest thing in the world. Make sure they come from the right app store. When you're setting up answers to security questions, lie like a superhero, because all these accounts care about. That's right, because people forget that with all of the posting going on, either by them or about them on social media, a lot of the facts that are used as answers to security questions are present. So therefore, you don't need to tell them your mother's real maiden name or the street you grew up on, or your high school mascot or whatever. And then the other thing is that freeze your credit. It's very important, and it's free. And this just means that no one, including you, can get access to your credit unless your credit is thawed. And if you're going for a loan, other than getting a mortgage where they're going to look at all three credit reports, find out from the credit extender, the credit card company, the credit line extender, which credit reporting agency that they're going to be looking at for your report. And then that's the agency where you thaw your report, and only for a short period of time. But as long as it's thawed, no one can get at your credit, which means they can't open a new credit card account or a new account in your name with your credit, because they can't get anywhere near it.
Well,
So those are the things you need to think about.
No, that's great. Now, Adam, if you could leave us with a quote or with something that summarizes what we talked about today, or something that has had a profound impact on your life, what would that be?
Actually, it's really a cyber quote, and it's something for people to think about. And that is that, and Bruce Schneier, who's a lion in the cyber industry, actually came up. I'd love to say it was my quote, but it didn't. Where he said, if you think throwing a ton of money at technology is the answer to your security, then you don't understand the technology and you don't understand security. So what it is, it's all about building a culture of privacy and security in your own life or in the organization where you work or you own. And always keep in mind the fact that we have day jobs, all of us. We live, we work, we raise a family, we're involved in philanthropic activities, we're getting an education. That's our day job. We are facing off against people, however, where we are their day job. And this is now every minute of every day. And so always keep in mind that you're up against somebody who you may think you're just you. I'm just a regular guy. Why would anyone care about me? But to a scammer, a hacker, an identity thief, you are Jay-Z, you are Beyonce, you are Adam Levine, because you got what they want.
And Adam, how can they find you if they would like to follow you or communicate with you or ask you a question from here? What's where can they get your book too?
Oh, the book is available. Thank you. The book is available on Amazon. We also have the podcast, What the Hack with Adam Levin, which is a lot of fun. It's doing very well. It's on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. Or they can come to the website, adamlevin.com. So that's adamlevin.com. That's kind of like the other guy, but just without the E. So,
not Levine, Levin.
not Levine, Levin.
So I assume you did not have any social media based on your, you have an Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, but you don't use them, correct?
I don't really. I mean, I post business related stuff on them. There's a joke about the fact that I have actually on my own personal Instagram account, I have exactly two pictures. One of a jug of water in the front of a car, and the second one, a friend of mine, I was freezing. I was at his house, and he said, well, here, take one of my sweaters. And it's basically this crazy Jewish star sweater thing that looks like it came from 1948. So those are the only two things that I've posted. They're not business related on my business related sites.
I love that. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time, Adam. Thank you for bestowing your wisdom on us and the audience. And I hope you enjoyed this as much as we did. And I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for so much for inviting me and allowing me to lower your digital property values. And again, I appreciate the invitation, and I hope this has been helpful.
Thank you, guys, and hope you guys, the viewers, have a wonderful day. And if you have any questions, you're feel free to share this. We love people to to watch Adam, to take some of his wisdom and implement it in their lives today. So thank you guys, and hope you have a wonderful week. Take care. Oh, I guess Matt said he's on a call, so he's going to hang up for us, Adam. But you're welcome to log off if you'd like, and I'll do the same. But thank you guys. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.